you're speaking, and then when I'm going to be asking you, of course, to speak, please unmute yourself. Okay, so I think that as we are having 60 minutes, and that's what we want to do this time, really to get in time, I'm going to start our conversation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you at the Citizens Takeover Europe, a citizen-led conference on the future of Europe, and the panel, The Future of Democracy. My name is Maja Mazurkiewicz, and I'm a head of intelligence and co-founder of Alliance for Europe. I will be the moderator of today's panel, and it's my pleasure to welcome our great panelists that are joining us today. That is Mogens Bleach Biago, the president of the European Federation of Journalists, dedicated to press freedom and trade union work for 30 years. Elias G. Karayanis, professor of science, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and director the European Union Research Center, School of Business, George Washington University. Also, our guest is Dr. Nabil Al-Sharif, Executive Director of Anna Lindh Foundation for Dialogue Between Cultures. I think that we're going to have a great, diverse discussion. What is very important is that we're going to have first short intervention of each of the panelists, around 7 minutes. And later, the discussion will be in the format of the roundtable. So we'd love to hear from each of you. What is important in here is that we're going to be discussing the state of the democracy. So for sure, quite a lot of issues that going to be discussing here is about the state of democracy nowadays, during the COVID pandemic, during the different authoritarian regimes approaching also within the European Union. It's quite a difficult time for democracy. So what is the most important for this panel is to find the positive recommendations of what we can do to make sure that democracy is working also in the future. So those conclusions we're gonna draft by our great Daniela Giglio that is in here with us as a note taker. She's going to be drafting all the conclusions you're putting in there, all the remarks, and later we're going to send it to European Commission. If you watching us later in the social media, please just comment below, and we are happy to see all of your comments and gather them all. Okay, so maybe I would like to first ask Professor Elias Karayanis to have the 7 minutes intervention for the future of the democracy. So what is your point of view on that?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to engage with everybody, and let me please find my PowerPoint here, which was easier before for some reason. Just a second, please. Yeah, the usual.
Technical issues always.
This is, yeah, well, that's, anyway. Thank you for your patience. Let me see if I can have better luck this time, I think. Yes. So now I hope you can see.
We can see it perfectly. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Let me see.
The floor is yours.
If I can, yes. And so what I'll do is go through some slides that relate also to my academic research, as well as my policy and practitioner collaborations and outreach. I'm a professor at the University in Washington, D.C., but also, of course, I was born and raised in Greece. And so I have dual both citizenship and presence and conscience now at this point. And the idea tonight is to look at some ideas or some concepts that emanate from the convergence of technology, society, economy, and politics, trends and dynamics, and look for opportunities, try to identify going forward positive aspects while being very aware of challenges that are current, clear, and present. and they do constitute both dangers as well as hopefully opportunities. So our approach looks at and uses the concept of a helix. I'm among those who have created the concept of the quadruple innovation helix, a concept, a construct that has been adopted and is being used broadly by the European Commission at this point in areas such as the smart specialization strategies and other economic development application policy and practice areas. This involves, in a helical sense, borrowing and being inspired by the double helix in biology, government, university, industry, and civil society, emphasizing the role, therefore, of citizens, balancing and, in fact, hopefully driving and shaping the top-down policies and mandates with bottom-up initiatives and actions. That's the immediate connection to what we'll be discussing tonight. But in my research and some recent writings as well, I emphasize the connection between democracy and the environment. This is the quintuple innovation helix, where we add the fifth helix, the fifth dimension or pillar, which is the environment, along with government, university, industry, and civil society. I also wish to say hello to my co-panelists here tonight, and I'm really honored and pleased to be working with them towards a better tomorrow for Europeans and others. Now, going back to technology and its manifestations in the form of innovation, frankly, in the context of the pandemic, there is hope. And interestingly, some of the solutions came from a company run by a gentleman whose roots are Greek. Albert Bourla is actually the CEO of Pfizer. He's Greek. And of course, then BioNTech has a gentleman who is from Turkey originally, in Germany. It's one area where collaboration can get beyond divides that we can talk about later. So this is about Machiavelli and how innovation is not an easy game, or it's a deadly sport, actually. In this context, it's amazing and encouraging, as well as surprising, how what the acceleration of the vaccine preparation has been. The compression has been almost 1,000% from 10 years to 1 year. And that reveals a lot of things that are going to be studied for sure, hopefully once we're beyond the pandemic. Now, briefly here, looking at where we are today with the landscape, the domain, and the frontier of digital transformation and digitalization, if you wish, the Industry 4.0 standard. We look at that because this is a rather technocentric approach. And what we emphasize in the context of the quintuple helix is what we call Industry 5.0. This is something that some have started writing about. We have been looking at that for some time because this is about balancing the human-centric with the technocentric. And obviously, if we have too much of technocentric considerations, you can have Big Brother in its full manifestation. And we have already countries and societies where people are scored on the basis of their social behavior, and they're being watched everywhere, and their faces are being captured and analyzed and so forth. In the same context, the society aspect, and this is something coming out of Japan and other places, promoting a more, again, techno and human-centric balanced future. This is Society 5.0, moving from the initial ones to the one which is not just about technology, but technology is actually the servant and not the master. And that's also another configuration we can look at here. And this also aligns, by the way, with the United Nations vision for 2030 and beyond. The quadruple helix explained, as I briefly went over it before, this is how and where the four strands come together: government, university, industry, and civil society, public, private sector, and effectively, this is also seen in a broader context where the environment encompasses, as it does, all of us and all of the sectors and the pillars. And the idea is, how can we actually develop initiatives and actions that are both society friendly and environment friendly? So in this context, and in the remaining time, I'd just like to look at some hypotheses, or perhaps as points of departure for discussion, What is technology going to do? Are we going to end up unemployed? Are we going to end up enslaved in some way? Well, there is definitely disruption that is happening and will continue, but our assessment and our expectation is that adaptation, evolution in that sense, and talent will act along, hopefully with good fortune and the opportunity to make mistakes more than once and recover, that we will end up in a better sense and better off tomorrow. The other point is about whether the democracy and the quality of democracy suffers from these developments, technological developments, or actually whether it is both being enhanced and it also enables innovation. And the general concept here is that openness actually drives a more competitive and comparative advantage going forward. And those societies that are more closed over time will rather tend to be less benefiting from such developments. Obviously, time will show, but this is something we definitely look into, research, and believe in the end. And a quote here from an interview of some time ago that we gave with a colleague of mine. Our fundamental belief and premise is that true and transparent democracy constitutes a sine qua non for smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth. And this is really, the European project in a sense. This constitutes our main motivation and guide for our focus on ways and means that concepts such as the quadruple and quintuple innovation helix can better serve and architect a better tomorrow. And of course, this is one of our publications by a colleague of mine about the global quality of democracy that I just want to mention as a reference. And I guess this concludes my presentation, and I thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Elias, for this fascinating presentation and showing us the ecosystem of Helix that basically says that cooperation is in the center and should be very important in our future democracy as well. Right now, I would like to give a floor to Nabil to talk more, I guess, about diversity as well.
Sure. Thank you so much, Maya. Thank you. And good evening to all of you, dear panelists, dear participants. It's a pleasure to participate in this discussion on the future of democracy. As you might know, the Anna Foundation is building on over 15 years of experience in the Euro-Mediterranean region with a lot of activities going on in many fields related basically to intercultural dialogue, and it's working with multi-stakeholders and from civil society institution. The foundation has acquired an expertise on bridging the gap between civil society from the Euromed region and institutions. The Foundation for Dialogue Between Cultures is the first institution created in 2005 in the framework of the Euro-Mediterranean cooperation for the promotion of cultural and social exchanges among the people of the region. We have members from 42 countries of NGOs, more than 4,000 in total, 4,000 civil society organizations as members of our network. We are actually referred to as the network of networks. So the place to reach the civil society in the region is the Anna Lindh Foundation, including from, of course, North African countries. The foundation has the largest and most diverse network of civil society organizations. In accordance with its statutes, the foundation is developing its actions in three main directions: intercultural dialogue to improve cultural understanding and combat stereotypes. Okay, I will have to skip a few subjects. Okay. the main tools that we need to foster and support through laws and targeted EU policies. Intercultural dialogue may significantly contribute to the improvement of democracy through greater legitimacy. This is where we really come to the important point. Where is the link between intercultural dialogue and enhancing democracy? I think the link comes from our work in the empowerment of citizens through social cohesion. When citizens are empowered and united, they are more able to work or to understand the importance of democracy and to work for its enhancement and preservation. The Foundation believes that the role of intercultural dialogue can serve as a particular area for deeper understanding and innovative democratic practices. An intensification of intercultural dialogue and a reinforcement of participatory democracy might contribute to the development of a new European policy of greater inclusiveness to increase a sense of belonging. Such a dialogue should strengthen empowerment and contribute to the deepening of the European identity. Intercultural dialogue, in other words, should be considered both a policy aim and a method of participatory democracy. The future of democracy will take place, as far as we are concerned, by promoting mutual understanding between European countries and between the European countries and the southern Mediterranean countries. This can only be achieved by bridging the gap between civil society and the EU institutions and governments. I think I will stop here for considerations of time. And of course, I'm ready for any question later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nabil. I think that you raised very important issues of promoting mutual understanding and basically understanding each other. I think in the European Union, we are coming from the different countries, but we are very similar, and we need to understand that sometimes, even though we have different challenges, we are better in order to fight them together. So thank you very much for this approach. And before I will ask you, Mogens, to give your opinion, probably mostly on the freedom of media and how you approach on democracy on this slide and the future of democracy, I would like to ask you that if you already have any questions or you know that you would like to speak later, the best would be if you could raise your hand or even write it in the chat below. So after Mogens will give his intervention, we will open the floor. Mogens, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation for this very interesting webinar, and very important to talk about how we can involve citizens in the democracy, because without the citizens we won't have any democracy. So that's clear enough, and it rightly said by you, Maya, that the different cultures, we need to know each other and to understand the differences among us. And yes, I'm talking about the media, because the media plays a crucial role when we talk about democracy, and when we talk about citizens' rights to take part in the development of our democracies. And this is essential. It is indeed fundamental that free and professional media can provide the room, the scene, the tools for the citizens to be informed and to be able to participate. And I will also say a few things about COVID-19, because and as Elias did, because during the COVID-19 we have experienced a huge number of press conferences where political leaders announce restrictions, recommendations, and all of that extremely important for the citizens. And of course, media has a significant and important role to play, to be accurate and to be fast. However, it's also important that journalists can ask questions, can follow up on questions, and please remember that this is on behalf of the citizens. And furthermore, political leaders must understand, this is crucial for democracy also, that they should be able to give interviews and accept that journalists have the role to be critical, because that provides the credibility also for politicians and the credibility for the society. Unfortunately, we have seen political leaders almost only using social media with a false excuse that by using social media, you will reach out to most citizens. That's not true. On Facebook, Twitter, etc., you are reaching out to your own bubble. Even it can be big, but it's your own bubble. You're not reaching out to all the citizens. It's a mistake to think that you are doing that. Nobody among their followers has the obligation to hold the politician accountable. The followers can comment and ask questions, but won't necessarily get any answers, or most likely would only rarely get an answer when you ask questions on the social media. Tweets and updates are normally not subject for code of ethics as professional media is. We are mostly talking about one-way communication to followers, well knowing that media, of course, also are among the followers. And of course, political leaders must be on social media. I'm not denying that at all, no question about it. But it can and should never replace professional media, because a pluralistic media landscape has a completely different but very important holistic approach when it comes to holding the politicians, holding those who are responsible accountable. And this is my second point, that pluralism, and it is about pluralism and editorial freedom. Remember that journalism is a public good, and media should meet citizens in all ages, at all places, and at all platforms. And we are talking about national media. We're talking about cross-border media. We are talking about regional media, and we are talking about local media. And regardless if it's on paper, it is broadcast or digital, the media need to be where the citizens are. And we often see in more and more countries that some of those media are disappearing. And when those media are disappearing, and in particular local media have disappeared in many places, you disappear from the citizens do not get the information that they need to be able to take part in the democracy. And that's why media need to be fed. Media cannot only survive in a market society where only the market is deciding what media can survive and what media cannot survive. We need to find ways to make sure that we have pluralistic media. To be professional, you also have to be credible. And therefore, I have the following messages to politicians at all levels. Stay away from the newsroom and this counts also of also owners of private news outlets. There must be waterproof bulkheads. Therefore, I also argue for self-regulation. That requires code of ethics made and decided by media themselves and independent press councils. Why should media be allowed to regulate themselves? Because any other sort of regulation will lead to censorship. You see clearly that in countries where without strong self-regulatory bodies, governments automatically will go in and regulate. And when they're going in and regulate, you have censorship. On the other hand, it is of course a prerequisite that press councils are working fast and transparent to be useful for the citizens. They must be credible. In the European Federation of Journalists, we have just finalized a big project on this with a lot of recommendations. And we are now starting a second project on development of self-regulatory bodies. Finally, I would say a few words about the media literacy. Nabil mentioned bridging the gap, which is extremely important. What is media literacy? Among other things, it is about professional media and self-regulation, as already mentioned, how to distinguish facts from fakes, how to identify disinformation and propaganda, to understand the difference between disinformation and misinformation, and not least, and that's why we as journalists should be much more involved here. You touched upon it in the previous interventions here. How to be in the best possible dialogue with our readers, listeners, and viewers. We have the duty to drive the dialogue and to enable that such a close contact is simply necessary by having mutual understanding of each other. Allow me also to underline the importance of getting out of your bubbles. We are often talking about the Brussels bubble, but if we don't care about our work, we can easily be considered just to have another new bubble to be in. And it counts all of us, also myself. And that won't be that much different from Brussels bubbles. So we have to bear this in mind, to be out there, to be together with the citizens. So I'm calling for media literacy. I'm calling for self-regulatory bodies in the media and professional media. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mogens. It's very dear to my heart, everything that you have said. As with Alliance for Europe, we are dealing with fighting disinformation, and we see what is happening as well now during the COVID pandemic, the disinformation, especially around the COVID vaccine, and COVID itself has risen a lot, and we see the erosion of trust. And I think that independent media is exactly the place that citizens should trust as a place to find facts, not just rumors and disinformation and fake news. So thank you very much for your intervention in that, and I think it's important. Mogens, are you saying something? Because
No, I was just reading the chats because I just read Serena Uberti.
Exactly. I just wanted to ask Serena if you would like to take a floor and maybe tell us what you wrote in there, because it's super interesting. You're just muted.
Unmute. Okay. Hello.
If you can introduce yourself, we can hear you perfectly. Yes.
Okay. I'm Serena Uberti. I'm from Italy. The organization that I'm joining on behalf of is 6,000 Sardines. So I'm an activist, and well, I was listening to all the points, and the media points, obviously, I agree on, and I think we have to come from more than different sides. It has to be comprehensive, and the side that to me is the most comprehensive of all, and the most effective to involve citizens is to teach democracy in schools. But in schools in Italy at the moment, we only teach the Italian Constitution, or we teach the history of democracy. But we don't have, and it's not a particularly important subject. It's 1 hour a week. It's not considered an important subject to follow for grades. And kids are not involved in a way that makes it interesting. One thing about also the citizens' assemblies is that citizens are directly involved, and we should do that with children in school, with exercises and programs that tell them exactly how it can work, exactly what it means to be informed, involved, to cast your vote. And I think that this can be done in a way that can be very fulfilling for students, that can be empowering in a sense. And I think that it's a necessary work. It's a long-term objective maybe, but even in a few years, in 4 or 5 years in high school, we already can have voters that are more involved in the democratic process and more interested, knowing that they can have their voice heard. For now, it's just theory.
Thank you very much, Serena. I think that's super important what you have said. We need to start to educate people from the very beginning, because we cannot only be reactive as we are right now, but we need to start to act, and we need to finally understand that every single action is causing something else, and that's if we will not be taking care of education, we will be having a bigger problem. Mogans, are you raising your hand? Would you like to respond?
Yes, because there are actually very interesting and good questions here. And I actually forgot one thing, because I want to emphasize that the Commissioner of Transparency and European Values, Vera Jourova from Czechia, she just launched the Democracy Action Plan, and you should really read it. It is one of the most visionary action plans delivered from the EU, an action plan really looking for democracy and to have this involvement and so on. So it's a very good basic to work on. There are two very important questions. One from Helena Peltonen-Gassman about how can we make sure that that news media, that news outlets are independent. And this is linked, and I know in some countries that can be very, very difficult at the moment, but it is linked to the self-regulatory body, because you can only be there if you are independent. And to make sure that the media are independent, it's also important to have a system of support. I simply think this is something we have to discuss in Europe, how to deal with this. It is many different models throughout Europe, and some places I know that talking about state support for media is there's ringing a bell, talking about censorship and too much influence from government and so on. So this is really something we need to find ways on to make sure that media are free. I also saw the question from Esther Nagy.
Yeah, Mogans would like to ask the question herself, so I'm just
Sorry.
Yeah. If I see Geralt as well, so like after Geralt, I will let you speak as well. But first, going to be Esther. I'm just gonna make a short thing as well, because Esther is from Hungary, as I see, and I'm coming from Poland. And from what you've said as well, we're having in Poland a big acquisition of the very big media outlets by the Orlen company, that is state-owned company, owning normally like gas and dealing with gas, and now they bought the big media outlet, basically involving also in the manipulation. Esther, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. But you are still luckier because Poland is a bigger country and you have a more diversified media landscape. Our bad luck is that Hungary is too small. So we have a too small media market, and the professional media companies left the country because of the government's special taxes. You know, like the government made the situation, the legal background so difficult that they said, okay, we go. And as you also said, Maya, that government closed oligarchs bought up the media, and over 90% is government controlled. And the problem is that the advertisements, state advertisements, they go to the government-friendly media sources. So the whole system is fucked up in Hungary. Sorry to say this way. And even there were two complaints to the competition DG, actually, from a group of journalists and media experts, asking that they investigate actually the competition rule, the competition situation, because it's such a difficult situation for independent media in Hungary that they are really getting totally out of money, and because they don't get advertisement, even companies are afraid to buy advertisement in those media which are not government friendly, you know, which are independent or critical of the government. They don't want to advertise there because they are afraid of retaliation from the government. So not to get government contracts and stuff like that. So it's really a very crazy situation. And on top of all this, the media agency, the authority, which should be in control, as you say, that it should provide for the independence, this is also controlled by the government. So it is full of Fidesz people. So for us, it's really a catch-22. It's, of course, we can try to raise awareness of citizens, and we have media, we have Facebook, which is diffusing the who got caught in Brussels and stuff like that, but the public media doesn't talk about these things. So that's kind of real difficult. And I would personally like, and I'm very curious because I think that the EU gave the money, that the funds to the government, and the government misused it. And that's how we've got in this situation. So I don't know how to get out of this.
Exactly, that's a very big problem, and I think that there's lies in between, like how the EU can involve in the actions that are breaking the rule of law and the European values, and how to deal with that. I don't know if any of the panelists would like to also respond to that, or shall we give a floor now to? I cannot see. So maybe Gerald, if you.
Yes. Thank you for giving me the floor. I just want to strengthen and underline what I have written in the chat, because if we are talking about empowerment and participation of European citizens, we should not forget to strengthen the pre-political sphere. That is very, very necessary, because if we are trying to get cross-border associations and European associations, that will strengthen also the liberal forces in countries like Hungary and Poland and in Czechoslovakia and other countries, because if we have a really strong and legal fundament of transnational associations. So that means also that these associations, which we have now, are rooted in national laws. There is no possibility to create a European or cross-border associations, despite of having more than 30 years of discussions. But in the Charter of Fundamental Rights, we have been granted the freedom of association also beyond nation-state law. So what we are missing is the legal fundament, that the Commission comes with a proposal, with a legal proposal. We have in the European Parliament, the Vice President of the URI Committee, Dr. Sergei Lagodinsky, who is working on a report on this issue. So what I feel, if I take part in all these discussions, is that we are very, very focused on discussions on democracy, but we are forgetting the legal fundamentals, because that is very, very necessary. Because if we have legal structures for European associations, no head of state or government can forbid these associations, because it is European law. It is not in the reach of national governments. And that is, from my point of view, an absolute necessity to strengthen European civil society, because what we are calling of European society is national societies in Europe, but we have to Europeanize these civil societies. And that is what we should also here as citizens take over Europe, because we are European citizens, because otherwise we won't be here.
Gerald, thank you very much for raising this point, because it's super important. We definitely need to put it as one of the main issues as well. We as Alliance for Europe are actually formed by 26 people from all over Europe, and we couldn't do the organization that has been pan-European. We needed to choose one country, and we never wanted to do, but that is the
crucial
issue.
point.
We want cooperation. We believe that we need to work together, and we cannot do that. So yeah, I think that for the democracy and for the citizens takeover, it's super important. I have a question in here from Tiberiku. Nika, would you like to take a floor, or should I read that?
Hi, everybody. So I was pondering while listening to all of your points about some thoughts that I had recently. So to put it in a really simple way, it is clear that we are living in an era of fake news, while at the same time we are discussing about democracy and freedom of speech. Out of examples and projects that I ran into during my work, my question would be, when we designate a media outlet A, let's say, as fake news, what is the criteria that we use or we should use? Or instead, should we focus as NGOs, as organizations working on a local level, regional, national, etc.? Should we focus on educating young people on what is fake news, what is not real about the news that they are reading, they are seeing on social media, and so on and so on? Or should we also point people to the fact that media A or B or C, whatever, are putting in the public space and spreading fake news? So I'm asking this question because at the moment I'm also writing a project for my organization working on educating youth about fake news. So this is somewhat from my own experience working as a project manager for the European Institute of Romania. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Tiberi, and you raised this very important issue. I see that the fake news and disinformation, it's a big topic as well on the chat. Also, Serena was raising the point. I don't know if you want to take a floor, Serena, or should I just read that? You need to unmute if you want. Or if... I'm not sure if Serena is... Serena, if you just want to unmute, then unmute. If not, I'm just gonna...
Okay, here, I'm here. No, it's very important, and I was actually about to write that this is, schools in Italy are starting to do that. I'm not sure, this is all things that come after the fake news. And many students just think, well, yeah, but this is something the school has taught me in a state that I don't believe in. So peers of my daughter, who's actually pretty fake news savvy and can distinguish them, don't really care, and they do trust the outlets that they want to believe in because maybe their parents believe in. I know that it's a very difficult subject, the free speech and an independent, media outlets that are independent but cannot spread fake news. If you spread fake news, should we close you? Is that autocratic? Fake news always comes beforehand, and it's more powerful to the human mind than the correction of the effect, the emotional effect that the fake news has. So yes, of course, education, we shouldn't and we couldn't be without that, but it's a long-term, a very long-term effect, and I'm not so sure how effective fake news today is widespread. In a few years, it's become rampant. And I really don't know how a stop can be put to that. I'm here together with you to discuss it.
I see that there is a big discussion going on the fake news and the disinformation. I don't know, Mogens, would you like to take the floor on that maybe? Elias,
yes, I would be happy to do so. I would be happy to do so, and I think Harry Hummel in the chat has some good points here, because you cannot make a top-down the decisions on this. and talking about the education, or talk about what I would call media literacy. I think this is one of the ways to deal with it, and also I've always been in favor. I'm not talking about fake news, because this is not fake and news cannot stay together. So we have to identify what we are talking about. We talk about propaganda, which is actually not very new. We have had that for thousands of years. We talk about disinformation. That's not new either. We are talking about, well, that's more new. We have all those trolls that we've got. I think it's important for in trainings, when we meet people, trying, how do you identify disinformation, and this is something for us working in the professional media. How do we avoid to bring disinformation into misinformation? Because that's what happens when media are running too fast, following social media, and simply bring news further, and then you misinformate. You bring misinformation because you don't do it by purpose. So there are something that we need to talk together about, and that's why I'm so much in for media literacy. And I fully understand you, Esther, from Hungary, and from countries where it is so extremely difficult to see how you can have those free media when you have this governmental grab on the media. We have been focused very much in the EU to make sure that recovery plans should not go to governments and from governments to media, because we know what will happen in a country like Hungary if that happens. And that's why I think it's very, very important to have some cross-border initiatives, and have some initiatives coming from sources that are not linked to the governments, and have better possibilities to support new media outlets, support new initiatives. It is, if I had the recipe here just to make it, I wouldn't have been here. But every time we talk about this, people like you are coming and telling me, hey, you are talking about, you're dreaming, and I know it, and I was expecting it, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't tell each other that there are something that we have to do and have to deal with, and we have to discuss it, and find the ways. But you are right. I know you are right when you are saying what you are saying, and that's why we have to bear in mind when we are in our Brussels bubbles and are discussing this with the politicians there. Thank you.
I think what is important as well, Mogens, next to what you have said, is the critical thinking. So a lot of discussion on the chat is about like how to handle fake news and disinformation. It's, first of all, we need to really acknowledge that disinformation is out there, and it's being used by very good communication professionals, using communication, using fear. So especially right now, when we are under constant fear, our brains are also working in the way that we are more prone to disinformation. So we need to be aware of disinformation and fake news is being in there, and use the critical thinking and really find the sources and find the trust sources. And what is really something that is keeping me as well kind of sane. And first of all, I'm going to tell you that even if I'm working with disinformation for over 3 years already, I still can sometimes think that disinformation narratives are true, but I need to check them, because they are just working in the way that they do, and we cannot kind of stop our minds in the way. So especially when we see that something is really touching our emotions and our heart, we need to fact check this information. And it's really, really important. So media literacy and critical thinking, definitely. Gerald, you're raising your hand as well. Seen Lucy, I don't know if you would like to speak, because you've been making quite a lot of points. And Harry Hamel, would you like to speak? Maybe because Gerald, you've been already speaking, so let's see if any of the other participants that is super active on the chat would like to. Harry, please.
Yeah, I can say a couple of things. Well, basically, this is what I wrote already, but, I think that, big mistakes have been made in kind of assuming that media that is left to market forces would automatically become pluralistic and and critical and not aligned with government wishes. I think that both in a number of Central European countries and in many of the European Union accession countries, Western Balkan countries, even worse in Turkey, you see a very heavy monopolization or quasi-monopolization of media by companies between quotation marks that are very close to government or very close to oligarchic politicians, sometimes with mafia connections. And this is a pattern that I think has not been foreseen, neither by European Union nor by civil society, in the particular human rights organizations of civil society to which I belong. I think they have been focusing too much on freedom of expression. Even in Hungary, if you write on a website certain opinions, or if you, like on a Facebook page, post this news from Brussels, you will not be prosecuted. So there is freedom of opinion. The thing is that these opinions, that the big majority of the population is not reached by this information. They are reached by monopolized and manipulated mass media. This is so, and in my, I am convinced that you can only, break this by, having an intelligent policy on pluralism of media. So I think in some cases, there could be European Union support for, media that, report in a qualitative, proper way, according to journalistic standards. I think these do exist, and I think these can be, judged and rewarded if a certain outlet operates according to these principles. But I think more important is that you should, so this is an essential building block of democracy, and this I think also has not been realized enough. The most important is that the basic actors in democracy, the individual persons, the citizens who are voting and should engage in other ways in public life, that they are themselves convinced that it is important to be part of an area of truth and an area of qualitative good information and information exchange, and to be able to base your opinions on these type of on that type of information.
Thank you very much.
So I will post now in the chat again. I will, there is a project in Ukraine which I like very much, which tries to do this, and there are some descriptions on the internet, which I think this is an example that we should try to copy in
that's great.
Union countries as well.
If you can put the project there, would be perfect. We need to finish in 7 minutes, and I have Gerard, Elias, and Nabil. If we will manage someone else, so please be fast. And Lucy as well. I see that you would like to speak.
Okay, I just keep it short because I want to raise my voice again because there is a kind of fake news that the Commission has no legal space. That is not true. And mostly the fake news goes on that the European Union is always going to harmonize everything on the cost of the nation state. So there is nothing to do with harmonizing all these national association laws. What we are going to build up is like we have it in the law if you are buying some things. So you have you can buy things on the national ground, but you have a 28th option, a European buying law. And what we are trying to do is not to harmonize the national association laws, but give the people the option. They can choose if they want to create a cross-border association or a pan-European associations. So what is very, very important is that we are not going into the trap of people who are saying the bad European Union is always wanting to harmonize everything on the cost of the nation state. That is not true. It is just a European option, and the Commission has the
Great point,
possibility.
Gerald. Thank you very much. I need to stop it because we still have Lucy, and then Elias and Nabil will finish the session. It's amazing that we have so many people wanted to talk. Please, Lucy.
Thank you very much. Just to be very briefly follow up on what speakers have been said. So fake news and disinformation media, of course, very dangerous, but now we even have to be careful who is marking media as disinformation and right saying. This is what we could observe in last months here in Czech Republic, for example. And another thing, what Magnus also mentioned, this danger of ending up in our bubbles. I think it's also good to take care not for NGOs, for active citizens NGOs. It's great that we have them, but also some of these active citizens NGOs now just close themselves up into bubbles and don't reach citizens as such at all. So this is again not to think that media, local media is a medicine for everything, but we have to really see strong professional media as a base, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very important point. Elias, please.
Yes, two things. First of all, to Mergens and the others about democracy versus freedom, you have a point regarding the risks, but at the same time, I wrote actually partly in jest in the chat about a new GDPR we need. I would call it the General Democracy Protection Regulation. I think it is rather General Data Protection Regulation. I would like to really emphasize, in my opinion, that it is important that we clarify, specify, and legally establish beyond what exists already, perhaps, and link it with rubrics and penalties, perhaps, that democracy, the quality of democracy, and the robustness of democracy be maintained and protected by the member countries. We have issues such as what's the ratio of debt to GDPR and other such clear ratios defining guidelines for good behavior of member states. We should have some equivalent, actually quantitative metrics, if possible, as well as qualitative, to really express progress, and if there are issues, and then really encourage, so to speak, states to behave as part of the whole, because that whole, the EU project, is very important for the rest of the world. And I say that as both a European and an American. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elias. Please, Nabil.
Thank you. It's for me? Okay. Yeah. Yes. For me, actually, as far as I'm concerned, fake news is very much interrelated with also the content on the media when it comes to hate speech. So the two issues are related. And in order to combat these two phenomena, I think the idea that Magnus said about media literacy is very important. But also, when we say media literacy, usually we begin to think of traditional media. We do not think of social media, as if social media is an island by itself. We have to begin talking also about the ethics of social media. You cannot just, any idea that comes to your mind, put it on social media. There are legal questions. There are questions related to hate speech. So young people have to be aware of that. And finally, I think we have to encourage and support what I call the inclusive content. The content also from our perspective at the NLN Foundation that respects the other, that understands the other, that puts the other in the objective sense. We don't want to glorify anybody, but we don't want definitely these platforms to turn into hate speech platforms. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nabil. Unfortunately, we need to finish, but the discussion is amazing. Like next time, we definitely need more time because I'm very inspired by all the points from the panelists and from all of you that that participated. I think that's really important. We're gonna be drafting the conclusions and sending them to the European Commission. Also, the event will be posted on our social media, so please comment. We're gonna give some time and gather all the comments as well. I copy paste the chat, so I hope that also we can deliver from that. It was a pleasure. We're gonna be now closing the breakout room and coming back to the plenary, where we're gonna meet with other participants from 2 other breakout room sessions. And we're gonna have as well the next event in the mid of January, but more of that will follow on the main session. So it was a pleasure. Congrats to all of you, I must say, and thank you for such a great participation. That's what we needed. That's the citizens' participation we need, and that's the citizens-led conference. So thank you very much. And see you in a second. I'm just closing the breakout room.